You're indescribable in every way. You search me out and now I'm caught up in your grace.
I heard my name across the ocean. You pulled me closer, the current changed. You showed me life, a new horizon, a silver lining, a brand new day.
And I'm like, oh, I can't find the words to say. And no, you're higher than all my ways. Oh Lord, it's you who opened my eyes to see and poured out your love for me. My God, you're indescribable in every way. You search me out and now I'm caught up in your grace. I just can't fathom it. Can't make sense of how your love so undeserving never ends. You give me freedom that leaves me breathless. My glimpse of heaven is life with you. Now there's no fighting this gracious rhythm. I lift my hands high in praise to you. Now every time I go, I can't find the words to say. And no, you're higher than all my ways. Oh Lord, it's you who opened my eyes to see and poured out your love for me. My God, you're indescribable in every way. You search me out and now I'm caught up in your grace. I just can't fathom it. Can't make sense of how your love so undeserving never ends. You're indescribable, ooh, 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 so indescribable, ooh, ooh, ooh. You're indescribable, ooh, 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 so indescribable, ooh, ooh, ooh. You're indescribable, you are so indescribable. Perfect love took my place. Only Jesus, only grace. What compares? What comes close? Where you call me, I will go. Perfect love took my place. Only Jesus, only grace. What compares? What comes close? Where you call me, I will go. You're indescribable in every way. You search me out and now I'm caught up in your grace. I just can't fathom it. Can't make sense of how your love so undeserved and it never ends. You're indescribable, ooh, 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 so indescribable, ooh, ooh, yes you are. Ooh, 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 so indescribable, ooh, ooh, ooh.
This is a song for the valleys, for the harder days. Something to remind me when I lost my way. And even though it's dark right now, I know morning comes. You're the God of the promise. What you say is done. And in the battle, when I'm surrounded, still my soul will hold you. All you said, you're my refuge and strength, my yes and amen. Put my trust in your name, 'cause you never fail me yet. You're the breaker of chains, defeated the road seems long, waiting for the promise that is yet to come. And even in the wilderness, will you lead me home? Jesus, you are with me. You're my only hope. And in my failure, and through my weakness, still my soul will hold to all you said. You're my refuge and strength, my destiny. Put my trust in your name, 'cause you never fail me yet. You're the breaker of chains, defeated the grave. All my hope in your name, 'cause you never fail me yet. Oh, and you never will. No, you never fail me. Yeah. You never fail me. Yeah. You're not in it, I don't want it. If you said it, I believe it. Where you call me, I will follow. 'Cause you never failed me yet. If you're not in it, I don't want it. If you said it, I believe it. Where you call me, I will follow. 'Cause you never failed me yet. If you're not in it, I don't want it. If you said it, I believe it. Where you call me, I will follow. 'Cause you never failed me yet. If you're not in it, I don't want it. And if you said it, I believe it. Where you call me, I will follow. 'Cause you never failed me yet. You never failed me yet. You never failed me yet. You're my refuge and strength, my destiny. Put my trust in your name, 'cause you never failed me yet. You're the breaker of chains, defeated the grave. All my hope in your name, 'cause you never failed me yet. You're not in it, no. You're not in it, I don't want it. If you said it, I believe it. Where you call me, I will follow. 'Cause you never failed me yet. If you're not in it, I don't want it. If you said it, I believe it. Where you call me, I will follow. 'Cause you never failed me yet. If you're not in it, I don't want it. Sing it. If you said it, I believe it. Where you call me, I will follow. 'Cause you never failed me yet. One more time, come on, sing it out. You're not in it, I don't want it. If you said it, I believe it. Where you call me, I will follow. 'Cause you never failed me yet.
You are here, moving in this mess. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you, I worship you. Everyone. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you, I worship you. 'Cause you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. That is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you,
I worship you.
you're turning lives around, yeah.
Turn your lives around. I worship you. I worship you.
You're mending every heart.
Mending every heart.
I worship you, yeah. I worship you, Lord, yeah. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness.
My God,
That is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness.
my God,
That is who you are. I declare, Jesus. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness.
my God, that is who you are.
I said, I declare. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness.
My God, that is who you are.
That is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. Come on, family, sing it out loud. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness.
My God, that is who you are.
That is who you are, Jesus. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness.
My God, that is who you are.
Have you been here, family? Even when I don't see that you're working, even when I don't feel that you're working, you never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see that you're working, even when I don't feel that you're working, you never stop working. You never stop
working.
even when I don't see that you're working, even when I don't feel that you're working, you never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see that you're working, even when I don't feel that you're working, you never stop working. You never stop working.
Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God.
Jesus. Waymaker, miracle work, promise keep, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are.
If this is your first time at Bonita Valley, we invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the service. If you want some info on BVCC, simply complete our online Connect card. Here's how it works. Scan the QR code you'll find at the Info Center, Guest Central, or various other locations around campus with the camera on your smartphone. Open the link that will take you to Connect card. You'll find a number of connecting options, including first-time guests, prayer requests, I want some info on a Bonita Valley ministry. Check the appropriate connection box you're after. Push submit, and we'll get back to you ASAP. And if you are a first-time guest today, please stop by Guest Central at the end of this service and pick up a special gift bag we have just for you. We'd like to take a few minutes to tell you about some things coming up for you and your family at Bonita Valley.
Every Wednesday night, BVCC provides life-building ministry opportunities for the whole family. For boys and girls, we have Bonita Rangers and Bonita Girls Club. For students in middle and high school, we have Bonita Valley Youth. And for adults, we have a prayer and worship service. All of these Wednesday night ministries happen every week at 7 p.m.
God didn't design ministry for just a few with seminary degrees. At BVCC, we believe that every member of our church is a minister. This is what Class 301 is all about. During this class, Pastor Mike will guide you through discovering your shape for ministry and how God can use your spiritual gifts, your heart, your abilities, personality, and experiences to minister to others in need. Discover the significant life God has for you in our next 301 seminar happening on Sunday, April 3rd from 5 to 7:30 p.m. in the Family Center. Pastor Mike will help you discover your God-given shape and unique purpose God has for your life. Childcare and a casual meal will be provided.
Our spring campus cleanup day is coming up, and we're excited to make our campus shine for our community at Easter. It happens March 26th from 9 a.m. to noon. There'll be jobs for all ages and abilities, both indoors and outdoors. Bring your work gloves and tools, or just bring yourself. We'll meet in front of the Life Center gym at 9 a.m. for light refreshments and to receive a team assignment. For more information and to sign up, go to bonitavalley.com and click on Campus Cleanup under the Events tab. We believe God has entrusted us to be managers of our time, talent, and treasures. We believe He wants us to use temporary resources to make a real and eternal difference in our world. And that's what giving at BVCC is all about. When we give to God, we see lives changed and transformed, both others and ours.
There are 3 ways to give at BVCC. Online at bonitavalley.com/giving, by texting Bonita Valley to 833-303-9325, or by mailing your offering to BVCC 4744 Bonita Road, Bonita, California 91902.
During our Sunday services, we offer a professionally staffed nursery that will lovingly care for your little one up to 2 years of age. We also offer an outdoor patio area and a family room with TV monitors for parents who choose to keep children under 2 years of age with them. Pastor Davida and her team lead incredibly fun ministries for preschool and elementary-aged children in the Life Center gym. During today's service, you can take notes, sign up for events, and even give using your smartphone. Simply go to bonitavalley.com or your BVCC app and click on Follow the Service. Thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.
Let me tell you one of the most important things about you. One of the most important things about you is what you believe and how you believe. See, our beliefs are life defining. What we believe is life determining. What you believe determines how you behave. If you don't actually behave your beliefs, you don't believe them. I mean, you think about them. But your beliefs are core. They're core to your character. They're core to your conduct. And what's interesting is that the Apostle John wrote an entire book, and the theme of his book is believing. In fact, here's what John writes about his account of Jesus' life. John chapter 20, verse 30. Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. John later says, if I were to write down everything Jesus said, there's not enough books there's not enough books in the world to contain all that happened in his life and ministry. Verse 31, but these are written that you may, what? Believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have what? Life in his name. John says one of the most important things about you is what you believe, how you believe, and whom you believe. Because believing, John says, in the right person, in the right way, is life-giving. John's whole book, he said, I was highly selective. I could have written all kinds of things because Jesus did so many things. But I want to tell the story, write a gospel, the good news. And I want to give you some signs. That was a key word, signs. John uses the word sign several times in his gospel. And a sign is simply then what a sign is now. It points a direction. It points towards something. It gives you a direction to go. And what John is saying is, I want to share with you some signs. The signs don't point to miracles. The signs point toward the miracle worker. I don't want you to see what Jesus did. I want you to see who he is through what he did and what he still does. Because the Bible says he doesn't change. Today, tomorrow, forever, he's the same. So what God did, he still does and he still wants to do. And that's why John wrote his gospel, his good news story. And we're going to start a brand new series this weekend as we head toward Easter. It's only a few weeks away. And the series, it's going to be based again on these signs that John writes about in the Gospel of John. And I've titled this series, Reasons to Believe. Now, some of you, you're believers in Jesus. Others of you, you're not. And some of you once were, and you're struggling in your belief. Belief is everything. And we're going to talk over the next several weeks about believing and about why we can believe and signs that encourage us to believe, because that's where real life is experienced in our believing, in our deeper and deeper levels of believing. And that's actually how John kind of got started. The first sign that John shares, the first sign that points toward who Jesus is to encourage and strengthen our belief is in John chapter 2. It's the story of a wedding. Anybody love wedding stories? Okay, half of the females. It's a wedding story and a sign. And here's how it starts. John chapter 2, verse 1. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been, say it out loud, invited to the what? Wedding. Now, there is so much in this story that we can't get to all of it this weekend, but let me just begin by saying this. John first invites us to believe in the God who goes to parties. He does. He does believe in the God who goes. Now, I already had you say out loud the word invited, because there's a wedding that's going to take place, and Jesus was on the list of invitations. He was invited. He wasn't just invited, he went. And he had just started, he had just selected part of his team. He didn't yet even have all 12 disciples. He had like 5 disciples and maybe 6. And he just started, so he didn't even have a full team yet. And they said, bring your friends. We want you to come and bring your friends. So Jesus went. Now, John starts out with this story, and this wedding story. And what's important to understand is that weddings in biblical times, especially in Cana. Now, Cana, I've been to Cana. We've taken trips to Israel. It's one of my favorite little places. It's still a little place. And when we go to Cana, we take trips there, we do wedding vow renewals. It's just so fun. There's a little Catholic chapel, and we do wedding vow renewals of couples, and they give you certificates. We're the wedding that Jesus was at and blessed. And so it's just, but in biblical times, historians say that in Cana during Jesus' day, it literally wasn't a town, it was a village. And they estimate that 50 families lived there. So we're not talking a big place. The big town was Nazareth. That was like 5-6 miles away, and it wasn't big. It had one stoplight and a Walmart. Or like it would have a couple years later. So it's like, don't think like a huge population. This is not San Diego. This is like a really small little village. And it's and people live there. People in biblical times, many of them never went farther than 7, 8, 10 miles away from where they lived their whole life. They just kind of stayed right where they were, and families and generations of families. And in a very small place that didn't have a lot of people, which didn't have a lot of weddings, weddings were a big deal. They were the party. They were the major events that people look forward to. You'd see your friends, you'd see your family. There was great food. There was music. There was dancing. Now let me give you a spoiler alert. There's going to be a catering crisis, and Jesus is going to do a miracle of turning water into wine. I'll just tell you right now, spoil the story. Now, some of you already know that, but that's basically what happened. What I find interesting is, and see if you agree with me, how many know that weddings are often accidents waiting to happen? Right? I mean, it's amazing that sometimes it's fun to go to weddings that you don't even know the people to see what's going to happen. I've seen all kinds. I've seen wedding party people get sick, like gross stuff. I've seen a lot of fathers step back when they give their daughter away and step on their gown, and pull it comes off their head. All right, well, I was in a wedding, my sister's wedding. I was the best man. There were steps sort of like this, except the whole front of the church was steps. And so the groomsmen would be on one side of the steps and the bridesmaids on the other side, and I'm the best man. And my best friend was behind me. His name was Dennis. And I don't know if because he's standing on a step and he locked his legs or because the candles took up all the oxygen, but he passed out. He fell right into me like a board, just fell into my back. I'm looking forward. I'm like, what? I think he wants to tell me something. I turn around, he falls into my arms. He's out like a light. I carry him down the stairs. I leave him there and I go back up and get my spot. I mean, like groomsmen are replaceable. They all look alike, so let's move back up. The very next week in the wedding, same exact step, the groomsman passed out. Again, there must be no oxygen right there, but he fell down the stairs. He didn't fall into anybody. Like people drop like flies in weddings. My wedding, Jewel and I, when we got married, Jewel came down the aisle. She looked beautiful. I wrote a song for the wedding. I sang the song to her. She came down and she had to come up the stairs, and we walked up, and then there was a couple of more steps that she kind of forgot about, and all of a sudden she steps into her dress and she starts getting shorter. She almost fell, but I saved the day. Now, that's my version. I don't know what her versions, they're not all the same. I think she grabbed me and I grabbed her, but I kept her from falling because that would not have been a good moment. And so I caught her, and so it's a good thing to save the day when you're going to be a new husband. So, and then later it was an evening wedding. We didn't have much money, so we had some finger foods and not much stuff. In fact, there was a guy that showed up, and we didn't know. He said, I'll video your tape at your wedding. And at that point, it was kind of a new thing. And I said, how much? And I said, no thanks, because we should have, but we had no money. So I just have to tell you what happened. So we have our stuff, and it's late. I booked a hotel about 45 minutes away. We got married in Springfield, Missouri. We go to Branson, about 45 minutes away, because we thought our family would mess with our car and stuff. So we're going to drive for the first night. It's late. We finally get there. I reserved the room on credit card. When we pulled up to the hotel, it didn't look good because there's no lights on. Like, this is not good. I mean, it's late. It's like early in the morning, midnight. It was late. I get up to the door. It's locked. That's another bad sign. I start knocking on the door. True story. I see this hand come over the top of the counter, and this guy looks up. He's been sleeping behind the counter. It's a great hotel. So he comes to the door, unlocks the door, and I said, man, I got a reservation. And he goes, oh, we didn't think you were going to come. It's like, dude, I gave you a credit card. So they gave our room away. Now, if I had been smart, which I was not, at that point I was clueless on multiple levels, but we should have driven back to Springfield because there's lots of hotels, but we didn't. He says, I'll get you a place. He gets on the phone and calls and calls and calls. He sends us out into the sticks. We don't have cell phones with maps. We're like, it's night, it's dark. He sends us to a camp. Yeah. To a cottage. It was horrible. To this day, like my wife's version of the story. That's why I got to tell you mine first. Because Jill will often say, our first night was a disaster. No. The room was a disaster. Like we weren't a disaster. I was, anyway. So back to the wedding story in Cana. Okay, I'm just telling you that weddings are often accidents waiting to happen. Jesus goes to this wedding, and his purpose is not to show off his miraculous power, because weddings have mistakes. He didn't go to this wedding to preach a sermon. You'll find no sermon preached by Jesus at this event. Let me tell you why Jesus went to this wedding, why he accepted the invitation. For the exact same reason that all the other guests went. To enjoy family and friends and good food and good wine and good laughs. Just to have a great time. Now, honestly, I think some of us don't have that picture of Jesus. Of Jesus being somebody who laughed and had a good time and just wanted to hang out with people. And that's because many of us don't have the right picture of Jesus. I'm gonna pause here for a moment, because I really mean this. It's very, very significant that the first thing John really tells us when it comes to a sign about Jesus is that he went to a party. In fact, Jesus, his purpose statement in life was about enjoying life. Let me show you. John 10, verse 10, Jesus says the thief, that's Satan, Satan's purpose is to steal, kill, and destroy. That's his purpose statement. I want to kill you, destroy you, I want to steal from you. That's what the evil one is all about. My purpose is to give life in all its what? Fullness. Jesus' purpose statement is life. I've come to give it. I've come to live it. I've come to experience it. I've come to show you how to experience life. I tell you, I don't have any doubts that Jesus was fun and that he loved fun. Now, some of you are like, well, hold on, that's not who. No, stay with me. Let me prove it real quick from the Bible. First of all, I prove it from this invitation, because at this point, the couple who invited Jesus to their wedding, he wasn't famous. He hadn't done any miracles. Nobody knew who he was except in this little local community. But when they were writing down the guest list, they said, don't forget Jesus. He's so much fun. Everybody loves just being with Jesus. So he was fun. That's why they didn't invite him, because he hadn't done anything yet. Are you with me? He's also fun because the Bible tells us that children loved Jesus and would run to Jesus. And when he was in Jerusalem, the kids were around Jesus. Kids were always around Jesus. The Bible, as we did a dedication earlier together in this service, and Jesus would pick the children up in his arms and bless them. Let me tell you something about kids. Don't like grouchy people. Okay, unless it's their grandpa that gives them money. But otherwise, kids don't like grumpy people. Kids aren't attracted to grouches, to killjoys. Kids like fun people. They want to bounce on their knee and do it again. And they like people who will do it again. And if kids love to hang with Jesus, he was fun. There was something about him that kids just loved him. He wasn't only invited to weddings, and kids not only loved him, but the Bible says that he was invited to tax collectors' parties. Now, tax collectors were often Jewish people that kind of worked for the Romans and took taxes from the Jews. That was part of their deal, and then they could keep extra that they charged. And so many of the Jews saw them as sellouts, and they hated them. And the only people who would party with tax collectors were tax collectors, because nobody else would hang with them. But Jesus did. He not only got invited, he called Matthew as a tax collector, and then once he says, Matthew, you follow me, then Matthew says, you got to meet my friends. He said to his friends, you got to meet Jesus. So he throws a party with tax collectors and quote-unquote losers by the religious people's terms. Now listen, Jesus went. He actually went to celebration events. In fact, he talks about this and how He got criticized for going to parties. Here's what Jesus says in Matthew 11, verse 18. John the Baptist doesn't drink wine and often goes without food. And you say he's crazy. And I, the Messiah, feast and drink, and you complain that I'm a glutton and a drinking man and hang around with the worst sort of sinners. Now he's quoting his critics, but don't miss how they criticized him. He just has too much fun. He just celebrates too much with the wrong people. Max Lucado writes, I think it's noteworthy that the Almighty doesn't act high and mighty. That the Holy One wasn't holier than thou. The one who knew it all wasn't a know-it-all. The one who made the stars didn't keep his head in them. The one who owns all the stuff on earth never strutted. Never. He could have. Oh, how he could have. I'm not one who easily envisions a smiling God. A weeping God? Yes. An angry God? Okay. A mighty God? You bet. But a laughing God? It just seems too unlike what God should do and be, which shows just how much I know or don't know about God. In fact, I was reading about a pastor, and he has an interesting hobby. He collects renderings of Jesus smiling. Now, most of us have seen pictures of Jesus on the cross or in Gethsemane and travailing. When's the last time? Well, let me show you a picture of Jesus smiling. This is the kind of picture this pastor collects. There's something infectious. There's something contagious. My belief is that Jesus did this a whole lot more than any of us ever imagined. There would not have been hundreds and thousands follow him. Now, obviously, they followed him for what he did and what he said, but I believe people were drawn to him because of this. John says, in him was life. It was the light of the world. There was something compelling about the laugh and the smile and the enjoyment that Jesus had of life. Now here's what, this is so important for us to understand. When Jesus calls his disciples, and this is his first week of ministry when he goes to this wedding. Let me set it up. Again, just context is so important. Jesus has left his home. He's been baptized by John in the Jordan. He was led by the Holy Spirit into the wilderness for 40 days. He fasts. Then he's tempted mano a mano. Satan tempts him one-on-one. And he passes the temptation, and he quotes the word of God, but he's hungry. And he comes back to town, and he starts calling his team, and he's skinny because he's 40 days without eating. And so now he gets invited to a wedding, and he goes. He not only goes, he's called like 5 disciples, and he says, okay, team, first place we're going is to a party. No, stay with me. First week at work, your boss says, we're not going to a seminar, we're going to a celebration. I like this place. The first place Jesus takes his newly called followers, and he doesn't even have all of them yet, is to a celebration. Now, the reason I lay on this for a little while is because I think so many of us and people we know just don't see God like that. I know people who, the reason that they don't want to come to church is like, I don't want to give up my life yet. Like, I'll come to God, but I got no more life left. No. Come to God, you'll discover what life really is. Jesus didn't come to take away your joy. He came to give you a joy that nobody can take away. It is different. It's not the same as everything else, but he came to not only enjoy life, but to show us how to enjoy life and how to experience life to the full. That doesn't mean that we won't have pain and problems in life. The Bible's very honest. Jesus says to his followers, in this world you will have trouble. The Bible clearly says that weeping may endure for a night. There is weeping that happens. There's weeping over the people in Ukraine and what's happening, but not only Ukraine. In Africa, in the Middle East, in South America. It's amazing. You and I only hear bits and pieces of the heartbreak and heartache that are happening around this world. But let me tell you what, there is so much suffering in so many places. And it is right for us to care, and it's right for us to give, and it's right for us to pray, and it's right for us to weep with those who weep. And the Bible says that, but it also says and rejoice with those who rejoice. Because we serve a God who is a God that goes to parties. And he wants you to know that. He wants you to know God in that way, that you believe in a God who hasn't come to take away your life. He's come to give you bigger, better life than you've ever hoped, dreamed, or imagined. That's what John begins by showing us. Jesus is invited to a wedding, and he goes. Here's the second. Believe in the God who cares about all your cares. The first miracle Jesus performs is not publicly saving a life. It is privately saving face. The face of a young couple, the face particularly of the groom. Now, think about that just for a moment. It's so easy to fly through these stories. See, one of my challenges as a speaker, as a pastor, is talking to you about Bible verses you already know, or we think we do. So let me just pause for a second. Jesus, if you're going to do the first miracle you do, I'm going to do a big one. Like my first one's going to knock their socks off. He doesn't raise a dead person. He doesn't heal a child. He doesn't heal a person with leprosy. Amazing. The first miracle of Jesus has nothing with saving a life. It has to do with saving face. Because see, you got to understand, again, we talked about, in this culture, there's a wedding. And they'll fully appreciate what Jesus is doing here and why it's so significant that John starts off by telling this story, is that Middle Eastern weddings are very different than American weddings. As we hear this, many of us just kind of plug it into our own. You got to unplug it from any wedding you've ever been to. Unless some of you have Middle Eastern backgrounds or you've been to a Middle Eastern wedding. But in biblical times, the wedding was not all about the bride. In American weddings, it's all about the bride. Here comes the bride. We all stand when the bride walks in. There's songs about the bride. Nobody in the American culture says, so what was the groom wearing? We don't care. Grooms in an American wedding, they have been likened to a restroom in a museum. Necessary, but you don't go to a museum to see one, right? You're going for the art, not the bathroom. Grooms are like bathrooms, like you need them, but not much, or you need them when you need them. They're not a big deal. In American weddings, the bride, it's all about the bride. It's all about her dress. That dress is so beautiful, you have to get a second mortgage to buy the dress. The groom, he wears a rented tux. Yeah, that'll tell you something. Mine's going back. She's keeping hers. But in the Middle East, in biblical times, in Jewish weddings, it was you got to shift your understanding. Weddings were not about the bride; they were about the groom. It was groom-centered. The groom was the focus. It was all about the groom. The celebration, the party, it was all about the groom. The groom would often, the weddings were in the evening, and the groom would go, you never knew when he was going to show up. Now, that's still true of guys, but it wasn't just because he was late. The groom, it was part of the fun, the joy, the parable of the wise virgins and the foolish virgins, and they're waiting for a wedding, they're waiting for the groom to show. It was all about lighting the way, because the groom would go at night, he would go to his bride's house, and he would get her and take her back, and they would have the celebration, and it was just like you never knew when he was coming. You had to be ready. It was a surprise element to it. If you'll understand this, you'll understand better John 14 when Jesus says to his followers, don't let your hearts be troubled. I'm leaving, but if I leave, I'm gonna come back, because I'll tell you why I'm leaving. I'm going to prepare a place for you. See, the groom would during the betrothal time, the engagement, was more than like our engagement. During the betrothal, they didn't sleep together yet. They weren't yet officially husband and wife. They were definitely committed to each other. But the groom would go build a house or ready a house. However long that took him to do. He would also try to get as much money together as he possibly could, because the groom paid for the whole wedding. He paid for everything. He paid a dowry, first of all, to get her, and then he pays for the entire wedding celebration. The bill was his. So sometimes it took a while to have enough crops, to sell enough things, to do enough business, to have enough money, because he had to feed the whole crowd, the whole invitees of the wedding. And it wasn't for like a couple of hours. Biblical weddings could last from 3 days to a week. So he had to make enough money to feed people and to give them food and drink for a week. So that took quite a while, which also sets up why it was such a crisis when they run out of wine. It wasn't just a social catering crisis. It was an incredible social shame. You got to know in biblical times, and even to this day, there are cultures, some of you are familiar with them, that are called honor-shame cultures. See, in America, we're very individualistic, like, hey, you blow it, that was you. But in honor-shame cultures, you honor your entire family or you shame your entire family. It's not about the individual. It's about my family. It's about my family name. It's about the history of my family. And so for this groom not to have provided enough for the entire festival, the feast, would bring incredible shame and embarrassment. In fact, so much so, in biblical times, historians say that if you threw a wedding party and you ran out of food or wine, it was a crime you could be charged for. They took having fun seriously. So back to the story. John 2, verse 3. Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." Mary knows party's over. And this family, my friends, will be shamed forever. So she goes to Jesus with this crisis. Now, some speculate that Mary did that because she had some involvement in the wedding. Maybe it was relatives. Maybe she was kind of being one of the caterers. I have no idea. But I'll tell you what she did know. She knew that when the wine was out, this family was facing the destruction of their reputation. By watching what Mary did in this crisis, we learn what to do in the crises of our friends and our family and ourselves. Because every one of us is going to have time when you're running on empty. Your car, your bank account, your health. We all have times in which we run out. And what do we do when we run out? We do what Mary did. Let's look at two things she did. Watch. We first of all need to take our crisis to Jesus. The first thing Mary does is she tells Jesus. Now, I don't know if she's expecting him to do a miracle. He hadn't done any yet. Keep that in mind. He's not done a miracle yet. I don't know if she was trying to push him to do a miracle because she knew the story. The angel had shown up. This is not an ordinary child. She gave birth to a child. She had not slept with a man. I mean, angels talked to her about his future. She pondered, kept them in her heart. So maybe she thought, Jesus is 30. It's time. I'm going to help him. Possible. Stage moms are known for being a bit pushy. But I don't think that was it. My personal opinion is the reason she goes to Jesus is because her husband Joseph had died. Now, the reason many scholars suggest this is because you'll read about Joseph, obviously, at the birth story. You read about Joseph when Jesus is 12 and they take him to the temple as they would go annually to the Passover, and they would take him there, and Joseph was there, and Joseph forgot him, and Mary forgot him. They both thought he was with the other parent. And so we read about Joseph there, and we never read about Joseph again. We don't read in this story, Mary, you read about Jesus and his family, you read about Mary at the cross, but you'll never read of Joseph, and the chances are very, very good that he had died. And what that means is Jesus, as the oldest son, was in charge of protecting, providing for his mom and for his other siblings. And if you're from a Catholic background, you think he had no other siblings, Scripture says he did. Mary and Joseph had not slept together. Jesus was virgin born, which was a miracle. But after that, they did have other children. Mark tells us about them. Let me show you real fast. Mark 6, verse 3, the crowds, they scoffed. They're scoffing at Jesus. He's just a carpenter, the son of Mary. That was a put down because you never were the son of your mom, you were the son of your dad. It was a subtle dig. We don't know who his dad is. And the brother, watch, of James and Joseph and Judas and Simon and his sisters live right here among us. So Jesus had siblings, but he was the oldest. As the oldest, he was the one who had to kind of step in where his dad would have been. So I tell you all of that again to say that Mary had learned to lean on Jesus. She had learned that when things don't go right, she couldn't go to Joseph, she would go to Jesus. And he always knew what to say. Jesus, I don't know what to say. Jesus would say this, because he's the Word. Jesus always knew how to fix things. He was a carpenter, a stonemason. There wasn't anything he couldn't fix and make right, and so she would take it to Jesus. Whenever she was confused or troubled, she would go to Jesus. So it makes total sense that when she's alerted that the wine is gone, I'm going to Jesus. Because I've learned that I can lean on Jesus. Jesus always knows what to do. So she goes to Jesus and she leans on him, and you and I should do the exact same thing. Peter says that, 1 Peter 5, verse 7, give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. How did Peter learn that? He watched Jesus care about anyone, everything, in ways that Peter said, you got to know how much God cares for you. That word all, interestingly, means all. Don't worry about anything, Paul says, pray about everything. One writer, I love this, he says, God cares about the major and minor details of our lives. God is great not just because nothing is too big. God is great because nothing is too small. If it's a big deal to you, it's a big deal to God. Some of us like, I don't bother God. You're never a bother to God. I only pray about big things. What's big to God? He cares about everything and take every detail of your life to God. That's what Mary did. So my first challenge to you that John gives us is do what Mary did when there was a crisis. Always take it to Jesus. But that's not all she did. Here's the second thing Mary did. Secondly, we need to surrender our crisis to Jesus' lordship. Okay, this is one more level. We don't just take it to Jesus, we surrender it to the authority, to the lordship of Jesus. Let me show you out of this story. John 2, verse 4. Mary says, Jesus, they're out of wine. There's a crisis. Woman, why do you involve me? Jesus replied. My hour has not yet come. His mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. Now, has this passage ever kind of confused you? Like, first of all, does it seem like Jesus is a little disrespectful? He doesn't say, Mom, Mother. He says, woman. We're like, whoa. Well, first of all, let me tell you, when you look up in the original language, he still said woman. But he wasn't being disrespectful. He really wasn't. He definitely was not calling her mother very purposefully. And there's a reason why he does not call her mother. I'll give that to you in just a second. But let me show you how Jesus uses this word for Mary another time. It's John 19, verse 25. He's at the cross. He's being crucified. Standing near the cross were Jesus' mother and his mother's sister Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. There were a lot of Marys. In fact, half the women in Israel at this time were named Mary. When Jesus saw his mother standing there beside the disciple he loved, and that's John, John referred to himself as the disciple that Jesus loved. He said to her, dear, what? Woman. Now the translator, there's only one word woman, but the translator here wants us to understand that this was not a put down or a distancing term. It was a loving term, but he calls her woman. Here is your son. He's referring to John. And he said to this disciple, John, here is your mother. And from then on, this disciple took her into his home. Relationships were vital to Jesus. He wanted to make sure that Mary was well taken care of. But he uses the word woman at the wedding and at the cross. It was not a term of disrespect, but it was a term of distancing. What I mean by that was Jesus was saying woman because he wanted Mary to know that the relationship has changed. When he's 12, he's at the temple, and he's talking to the spiritual leaders, and he's blowing them away with his questions and his knowledge and his answers. That's where Joseph and Mary left Jesus. Listen, if God gives you Jesus, don't lose him. But they lose Jesus for a little while. When they go back and find him in the temple, what does Jesus say to them? Don't you know that I must be about my Father's business? He understood. I got a bit, but he went back with them and submitted to their authority. He obeyed them. But now he's 30, now he's a man, and he's wanting Mary to know, I'm not under your authority anymore. You don't control me. Love you, but you don't control me. There comes a moment, there is this separation that has to take place. And he's separating, he's changing the dynamic of their relationship when he calls her woman and not mother. And a clue to that is the word hour. He says to Mary, my hour has not yet come. Now in John's gospel, there's certain key words, sign, believe, it's so important. But hour always meant crucifixion. When Jesus says, my hour has not yet come, he understands, once I start doing miracles and life's never going to be the same, the clock is going to start ticking toward my crucifixion. Let me show you real fast. John 7, verse 30, they tried to seize Jesus, but no one laid a hand on him because his, what? Hour had not come. You're not going to kill me before it's time for me to die. John 12, verse 27, now my soul is troubled. What shall I say? Father, save me from this hour, from this crucifixion. No, it was for this very reason that I came to this hour. He knew there's an hour. He knew there was a death. John 17, verse 1, priestly prayer. After this, Jesus looked toward heaven and prayed, Father, the hour has what? It's now. This is the hour. The most excruciating, he even prayed, God, if we can change this hour, not my will. He says, glorify your Son, that your Son may glorify you. Listen, when Jesus says to Mary, woman, he's saying, you're not controlling me. My hour has, there's a timing that you don't control, but God does. There's a sovereignty of God over my ministry and my mission and timing, and you're not in control of it. Let's establish the fact, listen, Jesus came as a servant, as a suffering servant, but he was not Mary's servant, and he's not yours. And he's not mine. Now we all go, yeah, I know he's not my servant. Oh no, we just kind of treat him that way. God, I need this now. I need this, I need this, I need this. And I'll tell you how I know we think he's our servant, how you react when you don't get what you ask for. Do you get ticked? Do you walk away? Do you give up? Mary could have done all those things, but she did not. What does Mary do? Do what Mary did when God doesn't answer you immediately in the way you want. It's fine to want it. It's fine to tell God, God, here's what I want. Crisis, do this. But what does Mary do? She doesn't get mad. She doesn't get ticked off. She doesn't rebuke Jesus. You know who I am. She doesn't do any of that. Mary simply says to the servants, do whatever he says. Let me give you a translation. Jesus is in charge. I'm not. Whatever he says do, do. Whatever he says how to do it that way. If he says do nothing, don't do anything, because he's the authority. So you have to come to a place, you take what you have, you take your crises and the crises of those you love to God, I do that, but then you surrender to God's authority and lordship. Do you believe that God might know something you don't know? Come on, we've talked about this before. How many of you thank God for unanswered prayers? Come on, I thought this was a country song. How many of you ever pray for something and you wanted it so much, and then now you say, oh God, thank you for not doing that? Because God knows. So I take it to God, but I always surrender it to the lordship. Knowing that God cares about me and everything I care about, but that God has the very best way and the very best time, and it comes down to, will I trust that he's Lord and I'm not? Are you willing to say, Jesus, whatever you do, whenever you want to do it, however you want to do it, is fine with me. You're the leader, not me. So the first thing Jesus does is he shows us that we can believe in a God and celebrate a God who loves to celebrate and goes to parties. And that there's a God who can care about us and meet the needs of our lives, and we can trust him for that. But let me give you a third lesson from this story. John says, believe in the God who can miraculously provide. Third word I want you to write is provide. Let's jump back into the story. John 2, verse 6. Nearby stood 6 stone jars, water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing. So many details in here that's just amazing. We don't have time to get to all of them, but they held 20 to 30 gallons. These are big containers. Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water, so they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, now draw out some and take it to the master of the banquet, and they did so. The master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from. He didn't know the whole story. None of us do. Though the servants who had drawn the water, they knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside. Why? Because he's the guy in charge of buying all the stuff. Said, everyone brings out the choice wine first and then a cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now. Now, how many of you, come on, you're the groom, you're going, you're welcome. He's got no idea what this guy's talking about. Like, he's just been told we're out of wine. Like, he's sweating. And now he's told, he's like, he did a really smart thing. How many know when you don't know what to say, don't say anything? He just smiles. Verse 11. What Jesus did in Cana of Galilee was the first of the what? Signs through which he revealed, pointed toward his glory, the weightiness of who he was, and the disciples, say it out loud, believed in him. See, this whole sign, this whole story was about believing. Because believing will make or break your life. Believe the right things in the right way, it's life-giving. Believe the wrong things the wrong way, it's life-destroying. Jesus is showing us, and John is showing us two things real fast. First, that Jesus can be trusted to meet our immediate needs. I already told you, cast all your cares upon him because he cares about us. But this story just again and again comes back to how Jesus, his first miracle wasn't raising a dead person. He gets there, but he starts with saving face. He starts with the shame, the humiliation that this young couple was going to face on their wedding day and their life and their family, and he cares about shame. But interestingly, he does this miracle. You're going to see with me as we walk through these miracles in John's gospel, you're going to see that in every miracle, there's a part for us to play. In every miracle, we have to do something in that miracle. I love the way one writer puts it. He says this. He says, if you want God to do the super, you've got to do the natural. If you want to experience the supernatural, understand God's part and your part. God does the super, I do the natural. In this story, Jesus could have done the whole miracle himself. He didn't need anybody, but he involved others. He involved these servants. Again, no-name people. I love how this story is just, he doesn't start out, he's not trying to make a big splash. He's trying to create a trust in him, believers. And so he takes these servants and says, fill up these 6 containers. They weren't used for hygiene, they were used for ceremonial clean. The Jews washed their hands all the time. You'd wash your hand when you came in, between each course of meal. It was a ceremonial thing because saying that my hands and my heart aren't clean and I wash them before God, it was all pointing toward a washing that was needed that the water couldn't do. And they took the same containers, very significant. They took the containers for ceremonial washing. You said, take those same containers, fill them with water, and then take a cup and take it to the master. Now, to the credit of these servants, they did it. Come on, if it were you, how many people go, I don't think so. Like, this is water. I know where it came from. And when I take it to the master of the ceremonies and I hand him a cup of dirty water, this will be the last banquet I ever work in. But they do it. The servants did the natural part of filling the containers with water, of dipping their cup into the water, of taking it to the master, and then God did the super part. Jesus did the super. Listen, this couple had gone from crisis, they're out of wine, to now they have 180 gallons of wine. That is over 900 bottles of wine. How many think they could open a wine store? Like, they went from being nothing to having Now, I got to pause for just one quick moment. The story is not sanctioning drinking. Okay, because some of you are going like, where's this story going? Just real fast. It's not a story about it's okay to drink. Now, listen, the Bible, I grew up in a home, we had iced tea and Diet Coke, and we were heavy drinkers. There was never a bottle of wine in my house when I grew up, ever. It just wasn't a part of my family. When I went to college, it was against the rules there. So I've been to a lot of places where it was always against the rules. It is not against God's rule, and the Bible does not say that drinking is a sin. Okay, let's just be really honest. The Bible does say that drunkenness is a sin, and that drinking for some people can get so out of control that it causes incredible pain. for them, their families, and accidents. And I have some dear friends of mine, truthfully, some good pastor, missionary friends of mine that started drinking and got into some really bad decisions and really bad things because it can break down barriers and judgments, and Scripture's very honest about that. But the flip side is that wine in Scripture, as I said earlier, is often a synonym for joy. And we have a ministry here called Celebrate Recovery because some people, because of drinking and because of alcohol, it has just done a number on their life. And it's one of our amazing ministries that I love to see people set free. And when we do communion, we use grape juice because you don't need wine. It's just really the grapes. And so just understand this is not a story about drinking. It's a story about joy. So don't say, the pastor said, let's go get some wine. That's not what this story is about. Okay. And I heard a story about this actually it was Irish, because it just had an Irish priest, and he was kind of driving erratically, and a cop pulled him over and said, "Sir, have you been drinking?" And he said, "No." He says, "It smells like wine in here." He goes, "He did it again. A miracle. This is water." Anyway, so I'm just saying, okay? Like, don't pull that, all right? Don't pull that. It was a miracle about joy. The second thing to understand, Jesus can be trusted to meet our eternal needs. In the words of one writer, at the wedding in Cana, Jesus turned water into wine. At the Last Supper, Jesus raised an ordinary cup of wine and transformed it into a bottomless glass of grace. He took water, turned it to wine. He took wine and said, "This is my blood, my sacrifice for you. This is my grace for you. As often as you drink it, remember me." The ceremonial containers could not wash away their sins, but Jesus can. 2 Corinthians 5:21, for God made Christ, who never sinned, to be the offering for our sin, so that we can be made right with God through Christ. Being made right with God through Jesus is the greatest miracle of them all. Turning water into wine is not the greatest miracle. Becoming a son and daughter of God is the greatest miracle of them all. And how do I do that? My part of that supernatural miracle is to admit I need God, to confess to God, which means I just own who I am and what I've done, and then I accept, I believe that what He did for me, and it's enough. That's my part. It's all I can do. His part is the super part. And whoever believes, John says, He gives them the power. The super part is God, to become the sons and daughters of God. And that is what we are. You do the natural, He does the super, and the supernatural happens in our life. Why? Because what you believe is the most important thing about you. What you believe will define your life. What you believe will determine your life. So John writes an entire book giving us reasons to believe, so that you and I might believe in the right way and in the right one and experience an over-the-top life. And he starts by taking us to a wedding that was a sign, an amazing sign that didn't just point to a miracle, it pointed to Jesus. And it tells us something about this Jesus. It tells us about the God that we need to believe in. And first of all, the God we need to believe in is a God who goes to parties. Don't miss that. Because see, some of us think, man, if I go to church, I'm going to lose. No, you're going to find your life. God's not interested in taking away your joy. He's interested in giving you the real thing that's bigger and better and that no one can take away from you. We serve a God who smiles and a God who laughs, a God who sings over us. And if that's not your picture of God, you need a better picture. Because if our perspective's wrong, often our attitudes and our actions are wrong. So start off with a God who loves to celebrate. Then He shows us a God who cares about all of our cares. I know for some of you this may not be grabbing you, but it grabs me that Jesus' first miracle was not to save someone, it was to save someone's face. You go, so what? No. It was a big deal to this young couple on their first day of their new life together, and God cares about things that nobody else even knows it's happening. He cares about the little details in your life. He cares about the big details because nothing's big in God's sight. He just cares about you. So cast all of your cares upon him because nobody cares for you like God. But when you cast your care on him, surrender it to his sovereignty. He doesn't serve you. We serve him. He helps us, but he doesn't. We're not in control of. And so if you get ticked when God doesn't do what you want, you don't control him. You surrender to him. And you believe that when God does what only God can do, it'll be the biggest and best you could ever hope for, dream of, imagine. And then the third thing John says is believe in a God who can miraculously provide whatever's needed. He'll use you, he'll use me, he'll use others, but he'll do the part we can't do so that you and I can believe in a God who will change our life forever. That's what this series is about. I hope you'll be a part. I hope you'll bring somebody else, because over the next several weeks, we're going to learn about the God we can believe in. We're going to learn ways to believe and reasons to believe, because belief always has a basis. It's always got a reason. Would you bow your heads and hearts to me just for a moment? Father, thank you for this story. Many of us have heard it since we were children. Others of us, it might be fresh. But I ask that you would make it real to all of us in a new way. On whatever level we need it today. Heads are bowed, eyes are closed, just for a moment. I'm going to ask just no movement, just for a second, please, unless you absolutely have to. The final moments of our time together are decision-making moments, and that's why they're just so important. That we just shut everything out just for a few moments. Everything else can wait. Because I believe this is an eternal moment. Eternity changes in this moment for many of us. So here's the deal. If you've never crossed the line of faith, if you've never said, Jesus, I accept you as the Savior and leader of my life, it's not going to church. It's accepting the one who can change your life. I want to pray with you and for you, and all of you who are online, wherever you may be, whatever hour or time you be watching, I believe God sovereignly controls our appointments. I'm going to ask you, if you say, Jeff, I've never surrendered to Jesus, I don't really have the peace, the forgiveness, I don't have that joy that you're talking about, but I want to today. I want you to raise a hand real quick. I'll not embarrass you, I'll not call you out, but I'm going to pray with you, and it always requires a response from us. My part is to admit, just say, God, I need you. So real quick, all over this room, just raise it for a moment. Thank you. You, thanks. Others, right where you are. Thank you. Others, just for a moment, so just would you pray with me? And we want to agree with you, and all of you who are watching online. I want you to pray this prayer. It doesn't have to be out loud. It can be in your heart, but just say, Jesus, I need you. Forgive me of my sin that's trying to run my own life. I believe that when you suffered and died, you were paying for me, that I could belong to you forever. And I receive that gift. In Jesus' name, amen.